The Galactic Coalition had fought wars for 10,000 years. Their military academies taught strategies refined across countless campaigns on 1,000,000 worlds. Every species that joined the coalition brought their own wisdom to the collective knowledge base. The Veltari contributed their doctrine of overwhelming force. The Crescent Empire shared their philosophy of precise, surgical strikes. The Mindari Collective offered their expertise in psychological warfare and deception. Yet none of them had ever encountered anything quite like Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. High Admiral Vorath of the Coalition fleet stood on the command deck of his flagship, the Eternal Resolve. His 4 eyes scanned the tactical display with growing frustration. The human colony world of New Tasmania hung before them, a blue and green jewel against the black void of space. It should have been an easy conquest. The humans had only been part of the galactic community for 50 years. They were newcomers, children really, compared to species that had sailed between stars for millennia. Their technology was adequate but not exceptional. Their military was small and poorly funded. When the Coalition decided to bring humanity under their control, most strategists expected the campaign to last a standard month at most. That was 6 months ago. "Report," Vorath demanded, his deep voice echoing through the command center. Fleet Tactician Cress stepped forward, her silver scales catching the light of the holographic displays. "High Admiral, our ground forces on the northern continent have reported another setback. The human commander has withdrawn her main force to the mountain ranges. Then we shall pursue them into the mountains and crush them there." Cress hesitated. "That is precisely what our generals attempted, High Admiral. The mountain passes have been fortified with automated defense systems. Our forces suffered 40% casualties before reaching the first checkpoint. The humans then collapsed the tunnel systems they had dug, trapping our advance elements underground." Vorath's mandibles clicked with annoyance. "And the southern assault?" "The wetlands proved impassable for our heavy armor. The humans had seeded the swamps with some form of bioengineered plant life that releases corrosive spores. 3,000 soldiers were lost to equipment failure and chemical burns. The orbital bombardment I ordered. The humans have dispersed their population centers. Our intelligence cannot locate their command structure. Every time we target what appears to be a military installation, it turns out to be a decoy. Meanwhile, their real forces strike at our supply lines." Vorath slammed his fist against the railing of his command platform. "One world, one small human world with a population of barely 3 million. How can they resist the might of the Coalition?" The answer to his question was currently sitting in a cave system 30 kilometers beneath the planet's northern mountain range. Commander Sarah Chen reviewed the latest intelligence reports on a battered personal display unit. Her uniform was dusty and torn in several places. She had not slept properly in days. A half-eaten ration bar sat forgotten beside her. But she was smiling. "Ma'am," Lieutenant Torres approached her, carrying a cup of synthetic coffee. "The observation teams have reported back. The Coalition forces are regrouping at the coastal staging area." Chen took the coffee with a grateful nod. "Expected. They'll try a naval assault next. It's what their doctrine demands after a failed land campaign." "How do you know their doctrine so well, Commander?" Chen's smile widened. "Because they published it. The Coalition's military academies have made their strategic manuals available to all member species for centuries. They're proud of their system. They believe it represents the pinnacle of military thought." Torres frowned. "And they just let anyone read them. They never considered that someone might read them and find weaknesses. See, the Coalition has been fighting the same types of wars for so long that they've stopped innovating. Every species they've conquered fought using similar methods because they all learned from the same sources. It's a closed system." She pulled up a holographic map of the coastline. "They'll send landing craft supported by air cover. The craft will approach in a standard wedge formation, with the heaviest ships in the center. They'll expect us to fortify the beaches and meet them in direct combat. So what do we do instead? Chen's eyes gleamed. We let them land. In fact, we make it easy. Pull back all visible defenses from the coastline. Let them establish a beachhead. Tors looked alarmed. Ma'am, with respect, that seems like a terrible idea. That's because you're thinking like they want you to think. The coalition doctrine is built on the assumption that defenders will always try to stop an invasion at the point of contact. Their entire logistics system is designed around breaking through initial resistance. But what happens if there is no initial resistance? Understanding began to dawn on Tor's face. Their supply calculations would be wrong. Exactly. They'll advance faster than planned, outrunning their supply lines. And when they do, Chen zoomed the map to show a network of tunnels and hidden positions inland from the coast. We cut them off. Their doctrine has no provision for being surrounded on open ground because they never let enemies get behind their lines. Tor studied the map with new appreciation. You've been planning this since before they even arrived, haven't you? I've been planning this since I read their military manuals in the academy, 3 years before they declared war. Never underestimate the value of knowing your enemy better than they know themselves. The coastal assault began 2 days later. High Admiral Voreth watched from orbit as his landing craft swept toward the beaches. The tactical displays showed no enemy positions, no defensive fortifications, nothing but empty sand and silent forests beyond. High Admiral, Cress said nervously, this seems too easy. The humans have finally accepted the inevitable, Voreth replied confidently. They know they cannot match our might. Their commander has chosen to preserve her forces by retreating. It is the logical choice. The landing craft touched down on the beaches without incident. Thousands of coalition soldiers poured onto the sand, forming up in perfect battle lines. Transport vehicles began unloading heavier equipment. Within hours, the beachhead was established and secure. Voreth nodded with satisfaction. Begin the inland advance. I want the human command center located and destroyed within 72 hours. What he did not see were the thousands of hidden sensors tracking every movement of his forces. What he did not know was that his entire campaign was about to fall apart in ways his military education had never prepared him to imagine. Commander Chen was about to teach the coalition why humans were different from every other species they had ever conquered, and the lesson would be painful. The coalition advance moved inland with clockwork precision. General Thex of the ground forces had divided his army into 3 columns, exactly as doctrine prescribed. The central column pushed directly toward the mountains where intelligence suggested the human command center was located. The flanking column secured the supply routes and ensured no counterattack could threaten the main force. For the first 48 hours, everything went according to plan. The soldiers marched through empty countryside. Abandoned villages offered no resistance. Farms and factories stood silent, their inhabitants long fled. The only sign of human presence was the occasional distant drone, quickly shot down by coalition air defenses. Too easy, muttered Captain Venn, a Crescent officer attached to the central column. His species were natural skeptics, evolved on a world where predators hid beneath every stone. Something is wrong. His commanding officer, a Veltari named Thas, dismissed his concerns with a wave of his massive hand. The humans are broken. Their commander has fled to the mountains to delay the inevitable. This is what victory looks like. Venn said nothing more, but he kept his weapon ready. On the evening of the second day, the first reports came in. A supply convoy heading to the beachhead had simply vanished. 20 vehicles, 50 soldiers gone without a trace. No distress signals, no weapons fire detected, just silence. General Thex ordered a search team sent to investigate. They found the vehicles abandoned on a forest road, completely intact. The soldiers were gone. The cargo was untouched. There was no sign of battle, no bodies, nothing. Desertion, High Admiral Vorath demanded when he received the report. Impossible, General Thex replied over the communication link. Our soldiers do not desert, and even if they did, where would they go? 3 hours later, another convoy disappeared. Then a forward observation post went silent. Then an entire company vanished from the left flank. Deep beneath the mountains, Commander Chen coordinated her forces through a network of encrypted communications. Strike Team 7, confirm status. 7 confirms. 200 prisoners secured in Tunnel Complex Delta. No casualties on our side. Strike Team 3. 3 reports convoy captured. Supplies being moved to secondary cache. Tors looked at the tactical display with wonder. Commander, how are our teams capturing so many prisoners without anyone escaping to report? Chen pulled up a diagram of coalition communication equipment. Their communication system is hierarchical. Every unit reports only to their immediate superior, and messages travel up the chain through specific channels. We've been intercepting and replacing those communications for hours. But they must have encryption. They do. The same encryption they've used for 300 years. The same encryption they published the mathematical foundations for in their scientific journals. They're so confident in their systems that they never bothered to update them. Chen shook her head. The coalition has been unchallenged for so long that they've forgotten what real competition looks like. The capture operations continued through the night. Human teams emerged from hidden tunnels behind coalition lines, using specialized equipment that masked their heat signatures and electromagnetic emissions. They targeted isolated units, surrounding them before they could call for help. The coalition soldiers, trained for conventional warfare, had no doctrine for fighting an enemy that could appear from nowhere and vanish just as quickly. Many surrendered without firing a shot, confused and frightened by tactics they had never seen before. By dawn of the third day, the coalition advance had stopped, not because of any order but because the army no longer knew where it was going. Communications were chaos. Units could not contact their superiors. Supply lines had collapsed. Maps showed positions that no longer existed. General Thex tried to restore order, sending messengers when electronic communication failed. But the messengers disappeared too. Some returned, but with different orders than he had given. Fake instructions spread through the ranks, sending units in the wrong directions, telling them to stand down or wait for support that never came. This is impossible, the general raged in his command tent. Where are the humans? How are they doing this? Captain Ven, one of the few officers who had managed to keep his unit intact, entered the tent. General, I believe I understand what's happening. Then explain it. The humans are not fighting us directly. They're fighting our systems. They've compromised our communications, our logistics, our chain of command. They're not trying to destroy our army. They're trying to make it destroy itself. General Thex stared at him. That is not warfare, that is. That is exactly what warfare is, General. We simply forgot because we haven't faced a true challenge in too long. On the Eternal Resolve, High Admiral Vorath received increasingly panicked reports from the surface. Units were surrendering to enemies they could not see. Supplies were vanishing. The entire southern flank had gone silent. And strangest of all, his forces were reporting that they were receiving contradictory orders that appeared to come from his own flagship. Find the source of these false communications, Vorath ordered his technical staff. Trace them and destroy them. The technicians worked frantically, but every time they isolated a signal source, it moved. The humans had built a mobile communications network, constantly shifting, impossible to target. And the signals were using coalition encryption codes, which meant Vorath's own security systems flagged them as legitimate. Fleet Tactician Kress approached the High Admiral with a datapad. "Sir, I've been analyzing the pattern of human operations. I believe I've identified something important." "What is it?" "Their tactics. They don't match any known doctrine in the Coalition database, but I found references to similar methods in the historical records we captured from Earth." Human history. What could primitive records teach us about modern warfare? Everything, apparently. Kress pulled up a document on her datapad. They call it guerrilla warfare, asymmetric tactics, psychological operations. Humans have been fighting these kinds of wars among themselves for thousands of years. While we developed our doctrine for conventional warfare between peer powers, they developed an entirely different kind of fighting. Vorath took the datapad and read through the historical analysis. Vietnam, Afghanistan, the various insurgencies and resistance movements throughout human history, methods designed specifically to counter numerically and technologically superior forces. They were fighting each other like this while we were still developing basic spaceflight, he whispered. Their entire species evolved under conditions of constant conflict. Yes, High Admiral, and their commander has studied not only our tactics but their own species' entire history of unconventional warfare. She's using methods that are thousands of years old but completely new to us. Vorath looked at the tactical display showing his forces scattered and confused across the surface of New Tasmania. For the first time since the campaign began, he felt something he had not experienced in a very long time. Fear. The human commander was not just fighting differently. She was fighting in ways that the Coalition had never conceived possible, and she was winning. By the end of the first week, the Coalition had lost nearly 40% of its ground forces on New Tasmania. Most were not dead. They were prisoners, captured by human strike teams that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. The prisoners were treated well, which only added to the Coalition's confusion. Cruelty would have been understandable. Kindness was baffling. Commander Chen had very specific reasons for her humane treatment of prisoners. She was not fighting to destroy the Coalition army. She was fighting to change its behavior. "We've processed another 200 prisoners today," Lieutenant Torres reported. "They're being moved to the holding facility in the Eastern Caverns. Medical teams report no serious injuries among them." Chen nodded. "Good. Make sure they're comfortable, feed them well, let them communicate with each other." Torres hesitated. "Commander, some of the staff have questioned this approach. These soldiers invaded our world. They would have killed our people. And their government ordered them to do it. Most of them are just following orders, same as our soldiers. Besides," Chen smiled, "treating them well serves our strategic interests." How? Word spreads. The Coalition soldiers on the surface are terrified and confused. They've been told humans are primitive savages. Then they get captured and find out we treat them better than their own military does. Some of them are surrendering voluntarily now because they've heard the prisoners are being treated well. Torres considered this. You're fighting their morale, not just their forces. Every soldier who surrenders without a fight is a soldier we don't have to risk our people capturing. Every well-treated prisoner who eventually goes home will tell others that humans are not monsters. This campaign isn't just about winning this battle. It's about changing how the Coalition sees us forever. High Admiral Vorath had ordered 3 separate attempts to reinforce and resupply his ground forces. All 3 had failed. The first convoy was ambushed before it left the beachhead. The second successfully delivered supplies, but the supplies had been contaminated with nanoscale tracking devices that led human strike teams directly to the units that received them. The third convoy simply got lost after human electronic warfare teams fed false navigation data to their guidance systems. "High Admiral," Fleet Tactician Kress said carefully, "I believe we need to consider alternative strategies." "What alternative? We have orbital superiority. We have superior numbers. We have superior technology. And yet we are losing. The human commander has found ways to neutralize every advantage we possess. She has turned our communication systems against us. She has made our logistical superiority into a weakness. She knows our tactics better than we know our own. Voreth's 4 eyes narrowed. What do you suggest? We need to do something she doesn't expect, something that breaks the pattern. Such as? Cress took a deep breath. We should negotiate. The silence on the bridge was absolute. Negotiation was not part of coalition doctrine. The coalition did not negotiate with inferior species. They conquered. They absorbed. They did not ask permission. That is unthinkable, Voreth said slowly. Yes, High Admiral, which is exactly why the human commander won't expect it. She knows our doctrine. She's counting on us to continue following patterns she can predict and exploit. If we change our approach fundamentally, we take the initiative away from her. Voreth considered this. It went against everything he had been taught, everything the coalition stood for. And yet, he could not deny that the current approach was failing catastrophically. What would we even negotiate for? The Coalition Council ordered this world brought under control. We negotiate for time. We request a ceasefire to recover our prisoners. We pretend to be considering terms while we develop new tactics that the humans haven't prepared for. You mean we use negotiations as a deception? Cress nodded. The humans have been deceiving us since we arrived. Perhaps it is time we learned from their example. Commander Chen received the negotiation request with mixed feelings. She had anticipated many possible coalition responses to her campaign, but this was not among them. The coalition simply did not negotiate. Their entire political structure was built on the assumption of military supremacy. It's a trap, Tors said immediately. They're trying to buy time. Obviously, but what kind of trap? Chen studied the formal request. The question is what they're planning to do with the time. Are they bringing in reinforcements, developing new weapons, or just trying to regroup their scattered forces? Does it matter? We should refuse and continue our operations. No, we should accept. Tors stared at her. Commander. Think about it. They expect us to either accept genuinely, giving them time to prepare, or refuse, proving that we can't be reasoned with. Either way, they get something. But what if we accept and use the negotiations to our own advantage? How? First, we demand the negotiations happen on the surface, in territory we control. That forces them to send representatives into our sphere of influence. We can learn from them, study how they think, gather intelligence. Second, we use the ceasefire to consolidate our own position, improve our defenses, and move more prisoners to secure locations. Third, and most importantly, we make sure the entire galaxy sees that humans defeated a coalition army so thoroughly that the coalition had to ask for negotiations. Understanding dawned on Tor's face. This isn't just about New Tasmania anymore, is it? It never was. The coalition controls 1,000 worlds. We can't defeat them militarily in the long run, but we can change how they see us. Right now, humans are just another primitive species to be conquered. If we can show them that we're different, that fighting us isn't worth the cost, we change the equation. You're playing a much longer game than I realized. Chen smiled. That's the human way, Lieutenant. We don't just fight battles, we fight for the future. The negotiation meeting was set for a small town on the eastern coast, one of the few human settlements that hadn't been evacuated. Both sides agreed to bring limited security teams. The ceasefire would last 72 hours while preliminary discussions took place. High Admiral Voreth made a decision that surprised even himself. He would attend the negotiations personally. He wanted to see this human commander face to face. He wanted to understand the mind that had humiliated his forces. And so, for the first time in the war, the two commanders prepared to meet in person. the human who had rewritten the rules of warfare and the alien admiral who was slowly realizing that everything he thought he knew about combat was wrong. The encounter would change both of them in ways neither could predict. The meeting took place in the town hall of Eastport, a small coastal community that had once been known for its fishing industry. Now the harbor was empty, the boats hidden in coves along the rugged coastline. The building itself was simple, made of local stone and wood, nothing like the gleaming metal structures of coalition architecture. High Admiral Voreth arrived first, accompanied by fleet tactician Kress and a small security detail. He had never set foot on a human world before. The gravity was slightly heavier than he preferred, the air thick with unfamiliar scents. Everything felt raw and unfinished compared to the precisely engineered environments of coalition worlds. Commander Chen arrived 10 minutes late. It was a deliberate choice. Coalition protocol placed enormous importance on punctuality. By being late, she signaled that she did not recognize their cultural standards as applying to her. Voreth's first impression was of how small she was. Humans were not a physically impressive species. Chen stood barely half his height, with no natural armor, no claws, no visible weapons. She wore a simple military uniform that looked battered and worn. She did not look like someone who had brought the coalition's finest army to its knees. But her eyes told a different story. They were calm, watchful, calculating. They were the eyes of a predator who had already decided how the hunt would end. "High Admiral Voreth," Chen said, taking her seat across the negotiating table. "Thank you for accepting my invitation." "Your invitation?" Voreth's mandibles clicked with annoyance. "The coalition requested these negotiations." "Yes, exactly as I intended. I've been creating conditions that would force you to either negotiate or face the destruction of your entire ground force. I'm pleased you chose the sensible option." Kress leaned forward. "You're claiming you planned this." "Planned it, engineered it, and executed it. The coalition hasn't made a move on this planet that I didn't anticipate. You've been fighting my war, on my terms, from the moment you arrived." Voreth studied her with his 4 eyes. "You are arrogant for a representative of an inferior species." "Am I? Let me tell you what will happen next if these negotiations fail. You have approximately 12,000 soldiers still combat capable on the surface. I have precise locations for every unit, every supply cache, every communications relay. Within 2 weeks, I can reduce that number to 0 without losing more than a handful of my own people. Your orbital bombardment capabilities are impressive, but you won't use them because you need this planet's infrastructure intact. And every day this conflict continues. Word spreads through the galaxy about the mighty coalition being humiliated by a species they consider primitive." The room was silent. Kress looked at Voreth, but the High Admiral's expression was unreadable. "What do you want?" Voreth finally asked. "A complete withdrawal of coalition forces from New Tasmania. Recognition of human territorial sovereignty over all worlds currently settled by humans. A permanent non-aggression treaty between the Terran Alliance and the Coalition." "Impossible. The Coalition Council would never accept such terms. We would lose face before the entire galaxy." "You've already lost face. The question is how much more you want to lose, because I promise you, Admiral, I can make this much, much worse." Chen pulled out a small display device and placed it on the table. "This is a recording I've prepared. It documents every tactical failure your forces have suffered on this world, every ambush, every captured convoy, every soldier who surrendered. I can broadcast this to every civilized world in the galaxy. I can show everyone exactly how effectively humans fight." Voreth's claws scraped against the table. "That would be an act of war." "We're already at war. This would just be information warfare. Another concept the coalition never developed because you never needed it. When you're the biggest predator in the ocean, you don't need to be clever. But you're not the only predator anymore." For the first time, Kress spoke up. "Commander Chen, may I ask a question?" Chen nodded. "Your species has been spacefaring for less than 3 centuries. You have fewer than 50 colony worlds. Your population is a fraction of ours. How can you possibly believe you can stand against the coalition in the long term?" Chen smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Because we don't fight like you do. We don't fight for territory or resources or pride. We fight to survive. And survival makes you creative in ways that comfort never can." She stood up and walked to a window, looking out at the empty harbor. "The coalition has been expanding for 10,000 years. You've absorbed hundreds of species, all of whom fought the same way because they all learned from you. You've never had to truly adapt. You've never faced an enemy who fought differently because you never let different species develop. Humans evolved in a unique environment. Our world was harsh and competitive. We didn't just fight other species. We fought each other constantly. We developed thousands of different cultures, different approaches to conflict, different philosophies of warfare. And then we went to space and brought all of that diversity with us." She turned back to face the coalition officers. "Every tactic I've used against you was invented by humans fighting other humans. The guerrilla warfare, the psychological operations, the electronic deception, all of it comes from our history. And that history is vast and varied in ways you cannot imagine." Voreth stood slowly. His massive form towered over the human commander, but somehow he did not feel like the larger presence in the room. "You want more than a peace treaty," he said, understanding dawning. "You want the coalition to respect humanity, to treat you as equals. I want the coalition to understand that fighting us is never worth the cost, that we will always find a way to hurt you more than you can hurt us, that the only sensible option is coexistence. And if we refuse, if we bring overwhelming force, then I have contingency plans for that too, plans that would make what happened here look like a friendly disagreement." Chen's voice was soft but absolutely certain. "The coalition is powerful, Admiral, but humans are dangerous. There's a difference." Voreth looked at Kress. The fleet tactician's expression was thoughtful, not frightened. That told him something important. "I cannot make decisions for the Coalition Council," he said finally, "but I can make recommendations, and I can tell you that my recommendation will be to accept your terms." Chen nodded. "That's all I ask, a chance for peace." "You have a strange way of asking for peace, Commander. Most species request it with humility, not threats." "We're not most species, Admiral. We never have been." The negotiations continued for 3 weeks. High Admiral Voreth made his case to the Coalition Council, presenting Commander Chen's demands along with his own analysis of the situation. There was resistance, of course. Many on the council could not accept the idea of treating humans as anything other than subjects to be conquered. But Voreth had spent those 3 weeks studying human history in detail. He shared what he learned with the council. The endless wars that had shaped humanity's development, the incredible variety of military tactics they had developed, the way they adapted to every challenge, found weaknesses in every system, refused to accept defeat even when it seemed inevitable. "They survived ice ages," he told the council. "They survived plagues that killed half their population. They survived disasters that should have destroyed them a dozen times over. And each time they came back stronger. This is not a species that can be conquered by conventional means." Kress added her own analysis. The tactics used on New Tasmania were not innovations. They were applications of methods thousands of years old. The humans have a vast library of unconventional warfare techniques that we have never encountered. If we continue this conflict, they will continue to surprise us in ways we cannot predict. The council debated for days. Some argued for total war, for bringing such overwhelming force that no amount of human cleverness could prevail. But the more pragmatic members pointed out the cost. The coalition had never fought a prolonged unconventional war. Their economy, their military, their entire society was built around quick, decisive victories. A drawn-out conflict with an enemy who fought differently would strain resources and potentially encourage other subject species to resist. In the end, pragmatism won. The Coalition Council accepted Commander Chen's terms, with minor modifications. Coalition forces would withdraw from New Tasmania. Human territorial sovereignty would be recognized. A permanent treaty of non-aggression would be signed. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. For the first time in 10,000 years, a species had successfully resisted coalition expansion, not through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer creativity and determination. On New Tasmania, Commander Chen watched the coalition transport ships ascending through the atmosphere, carrying their soldiers home. Lieutenant Torres stood beside her, along with a crowd of civilian residents who had emerged from hiding to witness the historic moment. "We did it," Torres breathed. "I still can't believe we actually did it." "We did something," Chen corrected. "This is just the beginning. The coalition will be watching us now. Every decision we make, every action we take, they'll be analyzing it, looking for weaknesses." "Then what do we do?" "We keep being unpredictable. We keep adapting. We keep reminding them that we're not like the other species they've encountered." Chen smiled slightly. "And we hope that eventually they stop thinking of us as a threat and start thinking of us as potential partners." High Admiral Voreth requested a final meeting with Chen before his departure. They met in the same town hall where the negotiations had begun, but the atmosphere was different now. The tension had faded, replaced by something that might have been the beginning of understanding. "I will be honest with you, Commander," Voreth said. "I have never been defeated before. I did not enjoy the experience." "It wasn't personal, Admiral. I was defending my home." "I know, that is what makes it so frustrating. You were right about everything. We have been unchallenged for too long. We have forgotten what it means to face a truly different enemy." His 4 eyes focused on her with intense curiosity. "May I ask you something?" "Of course." "The tactics you used against us, the psychological operations, the deception, the guerrilla warfare, these are brutal methods. They cause fear and confusion. They break the spirit of soldiers. Yet you claim humans are not cruel." Chen considered the question carefully. "We're capable of great cruelty. Our history proves that, but we're also capable of choosing not to be cruel. The methods I used were harsh, yes, but I designed the campaign to minimize casualties on both sides. I captured instead of killed. I treated prisoners with dignity. I gave your soldiers the option to surrender." "Why? It would have been more efficient to simply destroy our forces." "Because I wasn't trying to destroy your forces. I was trying to change your perception of humanity. Every soldier I treated well will go home and tell others that humans are not monsters. Every act of mercy is a seed planted for future peace." Chen met his gaze steadily. "That's another human innovation, Admiral. We learned long ago that how you win matters as much as whether you win." Voreth was silent for a long moment. "You have given me much to think about, Commander. I believe my species has much to learn from yours. And we have much to learn from you. The Coalition's science, your exploration of the galaxy, your art and philosophy. There's no reason we have to be enemies." "Perhaps not. Perhaps this is the beginning of something new." Voreth extended his massive clawed hand in a gesture he had learned from human cultural records. "I hope we meet again under better circumstances, Commander Chen." Chen took his hand without hesitation. "I hope so too, Admiral." The Coalition fleet departed New Tasmania that evening, their ships rising into the darkening sky like a swarm of artificial stars. The people of New Tasmania gathered to watch, some cheering, some simply standing in silent amazement at what they had witnessed. In the months that followed, the effects of the New Tasmania campaign rippled through galactic society. Other species began to look at humans differently. Trade delegations arrived, curious about the people who had done the impossible. Scientists came to study human culture and history. Diplomats sought alliances and partnerships. The coalition kept its distance, but they also kept their word. The treaty was honored. Human space remained human, and gradually the relationship between the two powers began to evolve from hostility to something more complex. Commander Chen was promoted to admiral and given command of the Terran Defense Force. She spent the next decade building up human military capabilities, not for conquest, but for deterrence. She trained a new generation of officers in the unconventional tactics that had proven so effective on New Tasmania. But she also worked tirelessly for peace. She established cultural exchange programs with the coalition. She supported scientific collaboration. She advocated for diplomatic solutions to every conflict, because she understood something that many warriors never learn. The greatest victory is one that never requires fighting. Years later, when historians wrote about the turning point in human-coalition relations, they always began with the Battle of New Tasmania. They analyzed the tactics, studied the strategies, debated the implications, but most of them missed the real lesson. It was not about military innovation. It was not about unconventional warfare. It was about something much simpler and much more profound. Humans had shown the galaxy that being different was not a weakness. It was their greatest strength. Their chaotic history, their endless conflicts, their painful evolution had given them something no other species possessed: the ability to think in ways no one else could imagine. And that, in the end, was what made humanity truly dangerous. Not their weapons or their numbers or their technology. Their minds, their creativity, their stubborn refusal to accept that anything was impossible. Commander Sarah Chen had understood this from the beginning. She had not just fought a war. She had demonstrated a truth that would echo through history. Humanity was different, and different in a universe that had grown stagnant with sameness was exactly what everyone needed. The coalition learned this lesson on New Tasmania, and they never forgot it. Neither did anyone else.